Welcome to the Mullet Gang.
A neurospicy podcast for neurodivergent folks.
We bring the spicy to neurospicy.
We want you to know that you are not alone and you are not too much.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to our podcast. This is our first episode ever. I'm here with Amy and I'm Susie, and we're so excited to bring this to you. I guess we can talk about why are we doing this podcast, Amy?
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about. And one of our main goals is really to support the neurodivergent community. And so when we say the term neurospicy or neurosparkly, that's really just kind of a fun, creative way to acknowledge that we're neurodivergent, meaning that our brains just work a little differently, right?
Absolutely.
And we want to build community around that. We want people that are neurodivergent to understand that this is a real thing. It's not a trend. It's not made up. It is valid. It's a real neurological thing that does impact your brain and how it works. And so your experience is real. You're not alone in this, and you're not too much. And that's kind of our message. We want people that are neurodivergent to understand that there is a community out there, and we want to build that. We want them to feel seen and heard and understood, and know that they don't have to feel isolated or alone. We want to create kind of the safe haven for them and raise awareness and education just for the general public as well, to understand neurodivergence and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, if we can reach at least one person and get them the resources that they need, I think we've done our job, and I think that we're both really a lot about community and about bringing awareness to having ADHD. That's big for us. And so I think that, yeah, I think this is a good thing. I hope that you guys enjoy it and get something out of it, because for us, this is our passion project. We really are super passionate about talking about neurodiversity and what that looks like for different folks. And, hopefully we'll be able to bring resources, guest speakers, ways that people can get the help that they need.
Yeah. And I think sometimes with neurodivergence, that term is misunderstood.
Mhm.
Often it's used for like ADHD or autism or ADHD, but it really includes just anyone that has a brain that works a little differently.
Okay.
So, that could also be something like trauma, anxiety, depression.
So this is like the neurodivergent umbrella, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
yeah.
of it as like a rainbow, right? There's lots of
Mhm.
different ways that you can be neurodivergent, and there's different terms, again, like neurospicy, neurosparkly. It's really just a way to explain that someone's brain works differently,
Mhm.
and understanding your brain will be very empowering,
Mhm.
because then you can understand why certain things are hard for you or challenging, why you have certain superpowers, which we'll talk a lot about. And once you understand that, you can learn to work with your neurology versus
Yep.
against it. And I think that's a big part of our message, is not just building that community, but empowering people that are neurodivergent to really lean into some of that and use their brain in a positive way.
This is giving me the chills, because if I would have had this in my 20s, there's no telling what I would have done with my life and how differently some of the things that happened to me would have gone. So I'm really passionate about bringing this, especially to the younger generation out there. But truly, they've inspired me because of things like TikTok and social media. I've actually been like, what? People are talking about this now?
Mhm.
I kind of love that. I kind of love that, we're all making mental health awareness our goals. And I think that the way that we really can come together, especially during these crazy times that we're living in,
Mhm.
is to really center a lot of our focus and our attention on mental health. And, I think it's a great thing. I'm just so excited to do this with you.
No, absolutely. I think it's definitely going to serve so many people, just to help them understand themselves and feel part of this community. So we want to create that.
Yay. So let's tell everyone who we are.
Yeah, I'm Amy. So I am a licensed mental health counselor. I've been a therapist for about 18 years. I have a therapy practice in Florida, and I also, in the last few years, have built a coaching practice worldwide where I offer different types of coaching services. And I really support neurodivergent peeps. That's kind of my specialty area, both in therapy and coaching, working with individuals that identify as neurodivergent, helping them understand their brain, empower them, and give them the support that they need. And that's become such a huge passion of mine. I am late diagnosed. So I was diagnosed last year at age 39 and really have become so passionate about this cause and raising awareness. I'm also a mom,
Mhm.
and that's a big part of my story too. In motherhood, I think that's when my symptoms came out and became really noticeable. So learning about myself, healing myself so that I can show up for my girls and be a really good role model for them.
That's so awesome. Also, guys, just for those of you who might not know, Amy's also a content creator and influencer. And this is big because honestly, we've actually reached out to more people because of your platform.
Mhm.
And you've been talking about this for what, like over a year now, right? Like really
Mhm.
reaching out to like young people out there, mothers, all kinds of um people who may not have known that they had ADHD. And so you're putting that kind of content out there, I think has really helped a lot of folks, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really been so fulfilling to connect with people on social media and to hear people say, oh my gosh, I think this may be me. I'm going to reach out and get help, or, this is my partner, or, my friend. So not just for people that are neurodivergent, but people that love them and care for them. So it's been cool to just get that acknowledgement that my content is hitting those people and helping them understand themselves and get the right support.
That's so awesome. Well, it's funny because you've got your therapist here and then you got your therapist. My name is Susie. I'm 40 years old, 40 years young.
That's right.
And I'm actually early diagnosed, but really didn't understand when I got my diagnosis. I was still in high school and like it kind of just went over my head. I think back then we were calling it ADD. Um, and to me, it just meant that I had some kind of learning disability. And I put the air quotes out there because, we know that that's not what it is.
Mhm.
But back then, I think it was really kind of talked about like that, especially in the media. So I just thought like, oh, I just need some Ritalin.
Mhm.
Um, I've been doing hair since 2006. I own my own salon. And for me, I think that dealing with a lot of people in a high-paced space, like workspace, has been my saving grace because I think when you're neurodivergent and you're in places like that, like you do thrive and it really has, its ups and downs, but I think like I'm always so interested in how like people work. And I think like I always love to see like the different personalities that come into my chair. And I think that in the last couple of years, I've talked to a lot of girls who've had like ADHD and like realizing that like we need a community. We need to like spread the awareness. We need to have this podcast and like getting to do this with you, like, we've known each other for quite some time. Amy and I actually met in high school.
Mhm.
The year was 2002, I think. 2000, no, 2000 and 2000 probably. The year
Mhm.
2000. It was
Mhm.
the year 2000 when we met. And I think we were attracted to like our spark, our energy. Like we were both high energy girls. Um, we I can't even it's hard, honestly, it's like so hard to explain like how outgoing we were. We were both very extroverted. We had our own little language, I felt like, and we got each other. Where we were too much for most of the kids that we interacted with, we were never too much for each other. And from that, I think our bond was so strong and um we grew a lot, like especially as young women. But yeah, we met in high school and our bond was really strong from the get. We also connected with music. I think we like going to like punk shows all the time and we were in the scene and I think those high energy shows like matched our
Yes.
ADHD and we didn't know it then, but um we had so many similarities, but we really didn't really identify with why that was.
Mhm.
But like most kids, after high school, we went our separate ways a little bit in college and in our early 20s. And I don't think we reconnected until our 30s.
Yeah.
And then once we like reconnected and had some like time to like catch up and have like a really deep conversation, I realized why I fell in love with you in the first place. You know, you just are you, and like there's just something about being neurodivergent that like makes a person so unique. Like their personality is special. Like you're just not recreating this. It's not, flatline.
Mhm.
And we have so much fun. We laugh. We get our sense of humor is so unique that we like actually get each other's jokes. And we can just go on and on and on and on. So I think that high energy is always met.
Yeah.
But now our friendship took us from being girls that went to high school together to talking about mental health and growing and empowering each other. Like I really liked how you said that at the beginning. Like for sure, I really hope that this podcast does empower people,
Mhm.
and people of all, backgrounds and of all types. Like I want people to hear us and like understand that they're not alone, and you know, we're here for you. You can join our mullet gang.
Yes, everyone is welcome, right?
Yeah, and also the reason why we call the podcast Mullet Gang Podcast is because, well, in our young spirited youth and also being super hyper, because when we were high, and I mean hyper, when we were
High
both
on dopamine.
when we were both high on dopamine at the same time, the world needed to watch out. Like we were running the show. And so while we were like wreaking like while we were at the mall, I want to say like our first Hot Topic ever experience, we decided we were gonna go in there like a bull in a china shop and just like wreak havoc. And we were messing around with the shop boys, remember that? And then
Mhm.
we were like, oh, what the hell is a mullet? Like we didn't know. And then like a whole world just opened up to us that this haircut would just have such an impact on us. And so yeah, quirky little story, but that's how we got the name.
Mhm.
And it makes sense actually.
Yeah, it kind of fits in with being neurodivergent in several different ways. And I know you and I talked about that when we were coming up with a name for the podcast. Number one, I mean, we thought it was so ironic, right?
Mhm.
Like, we found this notebook, it said, I love mullets. We didn't know what a mullet was, and kind of learning all the different definitions of a mullet, but then really leaning into the haircut and how funny we thought it was, and then buying the notebook. And then ever since then, calling ourselves like the Mullet Gang, like that in itself, I think kind of symbolizes our sense of humor and how funny we thought that was. But then now, even just understanding like the neurodivergent experience and how many of us mask, right? Kind of this idea that up front, what you see initially is maybe a different version of what's really going on, right? So it's
Mhm.
like business in the front. We talked about this idea of like masking, it's outwardly to other people, but then once you really get to know us and we get comfortable, you kind of see the fucking party, right? In the back, and really leaning into that. So initially it started out as like this fun teenage thing that we thought was ironic and silly. But now I think looking at the meaning behind that and the connection that we had, it really is symbolic, right?
Honestly, I think our friendship is based off of the unmasking.
Yes.
You were unmasked when you met me, and I was totally fucking unmasked when I met you. We were
Mhm.
what people call unhinged.
Oh, yeah.
Like, actually, if I could find that fucking notebook, it would have all our
Oh
secrets
my gosh.
and just all our freedom that we would express ourselves in that book with. Like, that I think is what really bonded us for life, is that I've never had to mask up in front of you.
No.
I feel like you just somehow got me and I just got you? And I mean, I know we've talked about like how with other friends, we definitely do mask, but even back then, like, no.
That book was literally like the book of authenticity. If you think about it,
Yeah.
and for those of you that weren't born in the 1900s, this was
Oh,
before
God.
texting and social media. Those things
Yeah.
were just barely coming out. But instead of like sending each other messages or DMs, what we would do between classes is we would pass this notebook back and forth. We had many, but
Yes.
that I think was the
That was
original.
the
We would
original.
just, I mean, draw pictures,
We'd
write
stick our like
poems, like,
photo booth pictures
yes.
in it. Also, it was like a way not getting caught like passing notes because
Mhm.
those are really obvious. So like the notebook looked like we were taking notes in class,
Mhm.
but really I was like, "Dear Amy, this is the worst day of my life."
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, needless to say, we definitely did not pay that much attention in class, but yet we still passed.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We couldn't focus. We were bored out of our minds. So we just would, write down all of our thoughts and feelings and share that with each other, right? But
Yeah,
that just shows how comfortable we were because we
yeah.
were able to divulge that. And
Hmm.
again, I think that really shows up now, even to this day, because we are moms, we're entrepreneurs, we're in relationships, we are doing life and adulting,
Yeah.
but we still can lean into that fun, silly, unhinged side that has never gone away and feel comfortable and know there's never going to be that judgment. And I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely. And you know what, guys? That's what like real friendship is, I think. Like being able to unmask and being able to find empowerment through your friend. That's what support looks like. I'm not going to judge you. You're not going to judge me. I can tell you like the challenges I'm having. You can support the wins. I'll support your wins. And, I think we both really value that. And it's hard to find sometimes,
No, it is. And I think when you find that and compare it to other relationships, you can see that contrast, right? When you're with someone that you feel at ease with, you can take the mask off. It doesn't take up a lot of your energy. Like your nervous system just feels different. And I talk about that all the time. Like your body and your nervous system will kind of send those signals. When you're with certain people, you're just like, oh, this is so easy.
Mhm.
And you know that you don't have to pretend to be anyone that you're not.
I think most of my friends probably like, especially now that I'm in my 40s, like it's taken me a long time to really attract like-minded people. And I realize that most of my closest friends are neurodivergent people,
Hmm.
and people that I literally aren't that close with are probably people who aren't because like they don't always understand like what's going on up here.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
When I got diagnosed, it was the same thing. Like I had a lot of people reach out to me that were like, oh my gosh, same. And, then you and I really started talking about it and just looking around your life and the people that you feel most comfortable with and you enjoy spending time with are neurodivergent. And the people that maybe you struggled with or you felt uncomfortable with are not, or maybe you were being like a certain version of yourself that you thought
Yeah.
you had to be like
Mhm.
masking or trying to blend in or kind of be this social chameleon.
Yeah.
And that takes up a lot of energy, right?
Yeah, I think even too, like there's this like I need to grow up. I need to stop liking the things that I like. I need to like dress more conservative. I need to talk a different way. I need to be organized. Like that to me always feels like a pressure that I need to be, but it really does conflict with how my brain works. Like I'll buy a planner every fucking year and I'll never fucking use it. That's just
Mhm.
not how I work.
Mhm.
And now I have the compassion and the grace to be like, that's fine. You don't need to work that planner, girl. Like your whole life is a schedule. You don't actually need another schedule on top of that to make you a person?
Mhm.
Um, and I'm at that point now where like I get that and I'm okay with that. And yeah, like I don't need to plan every little thing about the week. Like I'm good. Um, I lost my train of thought yet again. But you know what? Why don't we dive into our diagnosis stories? I think
Yes.
that's going to be huge for our listeners out there. Because it's kind of different. Like I'm diagnosed earlier and you're diagnosed later,
Mhm.
right? So for me, kid in school, struggling to study, struggling to pay attention in class, went to my high school therapist and said, "Hey, I'm really struggling," and they were like, "Probably because you have ADD." Um, so after that, I never really like went to therapy. I don't even think I told my parents because I was kind of like scared too. Like I thought I'd get in trouble because they'd be like, "Ugh, another thing." So I never really kept up with it or touch based or did any other like outside research with it. I just took it as what it was, learning disability, and moved on. Okay, so cut to I'm in my 30s and I've been doing therapy and I bring it up to my therapist that I'd been seeing. And she's been a therapist for a really long time. And it was just kind of like in passing, like, oh, in high school, I was told I had ADD. I think I was talking about like my struggles, like with school. I
Mhm.
always felt you know, like I was a little weird. I always felt like I didn't really fit in.
Mhm.
I definitely didn't fit in with the smart kids, even though I was smart and I was in all honors classes. I just didn't think like them, you
Yes.
know?
Mhm.
Like they would talk about like a topic that we were learning about and it just like didn't feel the same. Like I didn't even really know how to study. Studying was hard for me.
Mhm.
I'm very distracted. I took really long to take tests.
Mhm.
Um, and then also like rejection sensitivity. Whenever I wasn't invited to things, I'd be like,
Yes.
heartbroken. So much so that I even had a teacher one time tell me, all these relationships in high school aren't going to matter when you're like older, right? But back then, that's all I could think about.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, struggling with all this, it didn't just like end in high school. Like it kept going as I got older into my 20s for sure. And then as a salon owner, that's when I really hit my breaking point. I'm
Yeah.
overstimulated every fucking day. I'm on like high power workaholic mode, which I think a lot of people with ADHD struggle with.
Mhm.
I'm disorganized a lot. I forget conversations that I have.
Mhm.
And a lot of this was like really coming to light now because I'm doing a lot at work.
Yeah.
And running a business, as some of you might know, is hard.
Mhm.
It's not fucking easy. And you put a lot of yourself into it. And having employees is really hard because again, you're trying to be everyone's buddy because you're a people pleaser, but that's not what a staff needs. It's not what your team needs. They don't need you to be a fucking people pleaser. It's like the worst thing that could be in your business.
Mhm.
Um, and I went through a traumatic experience, and that's when everything just crashed and burned. And I went to a new therapist and I told her everything, like how hard I wasn't even talking about the thing that happened to me. I was just talking about like life is so hard. Like it's so hard. I don't know why. And then she was like, have you ever been diagnosed with like ADD or ADHD? And I was like, yeah, like in high school. So what? And she was like, I think a lot of this would be easier for you if you were on medication. And I remember I reached out to you. I was like, yo, this girl wants to put me on medication. I don't know about that. I thought I could just like do yoga and meditate the shit away.
Mhm.
But no, let me tell you, I'm gonna tell everyone out there listening, medication is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Mhm.
Boy, oh boy, did it clear out all the thoughts, all the obsessiveness,
Mhm.
just all the frustration that I've had. Like it just took it all away and like let me breathe for a minute. Um, and so yeah, after that, I started reading books, tuning into podcasts, looking at other creators for, advice or just hearing their stories and like feeling like, oh, finally, like someone that gets me. And then
Mhm.
lo and behold, my best friend starts making these videos. And I'm just like, you too? You have this
Mhm.
too? And so like one night as we're talking about it, I was like, this is why I think this happened.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's been my experience with it, and I'm really grateful for all the things that have happened. But boy, do I wish I would have like really leaned into this like back in the 2000s, early 2000s when they first told me, that would have been so awesome.
Yeah. Well, and you and I are both on this journey right now in our life where we're trying to understand our own like neurodivergence and how that fits into our life and how to cope with that the best that we can. But we did have very different stories as far as when we got diagnosed. So I think that's interesting. And a lot of it was just kind of timing and
Hmm.
research and the knowledge base that was there when you got diagnosed and our understanding of ADHD compared to what's going on now.
Hmm.
So for me, I got diagnosed much later on in life, age 39,
Hmm.
and that came out in motherhood where the overwhelm and overstimulation just became too much.
Hmm.
And finally, I realized something else is going on. My whole life I've struggled with things like anxiety and depression and body image issues, self-esteem issues. I've been on antidepressants, been in and out of therapy, and, it would help to a certain point, but I always felt like there was something else, right? There was something else that was going on that wasn't understood, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Hmm.
And, when I went to grad school 18 plus years ago, there wasn't a lot of discussion about neurodivergence, ADHD, what that looks like in girls and women, what that looks like in adults. I don't even remember spending a lot of time on ADHD. I think it was in like a childhood disorder class. Maybe we talked about it for an hour, but a lot of it was based on just kind of like young boys that are hyperactive, that can't focus in school. and there wasn't a lot of discussion about what we're learning as far
Mhm.
as executive dysfunction and all the different areas that it can impact us. So although we got diagnosed at much different times in our life, I think we're both now on this journey of really understanding what that means. And luckily, living in a world where there's so much awareness now,
I
right? And
know.
so much media and content about
Yeah.
it. And that's how, like, you're, learning and connecting with your diagnosis, and how I actually figured it out as a therapist, and then brought it to my therapist's attention and kind of went through the assessment process and confirmed, yeah, I definitely have ADHD. My therapist actually said that she's never met anyone that kind of checks the boxes as much as I do. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, especially like midlife, to finally learn this about yourself and understand it, because it really is very meaningful. It impacts everything that we do.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I was going to ask you, like, so there's people out there that have this probably and don't even know it because, like, not every therapist learned this, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is like a newer subject or,
Yeah. Well, the research, is new coming out. And so we need a lot more research and understanding. But yeah, I think there's this misconception that ADHD is just a trend. It's just
yeah.
a social media thing. Oh, everyone has ADHD.
No, bitch, they
No,
don't.
this is like a real neurological disorder.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just have more awareness, we have more education, we're finally doing more research and understanding how ADHD presents and all the different nuances and the spectrum, right, of
Mhm.
ADHD and neurodivergence. Even this idea that autism and ADHD have a big overlap, and there's this new concept of ADHD. It's not officially in the diagnostic criteria yet, but there is this commonality with autism and ADHD. There are some differences, but some similarities. So some
Mhm.
people actually have both.
Yes, I've seen that. And I
Mhm,
know somebody that I think has both.
mhm.
And like, it's, I think it's just amazing. Like, because our brains are just what? They're like barely even studied, really.
They're
And
not.
not everything can be like super textbook, right?
Well, it presents so differently, right? Like,
Yeah.
even though we both have ADHD, it's a very individualized experience. So,
Yeah.
the way that it presents for you can be different for me.
Mhm.
Certain things may be more challenging for you, easier for me. So
Mhm.
it's not like this blanket thing that you can say everyone that has neurodivergence or everyone that has ADHD is going to feel the same or be the same. There are certain things that we can connect with and understand, but again, we're all human, right? And we have our own lived experience and genetics and personality. So there's just so many different variables that we have to understand.
Yeah. And I think it like doesn't get the like people talking about it or how do I say this? Like, it's not getting talked about in the right way. Sometimes I
Mhm.
think that, we both experience like backlash a little bit, like, or family members or friends like
Mhm.
judging us, like saying, like, "Ugh, you don't have that.
Mhm.
Everybody, that's like the first thing my parents were like, everybody has this, right?
Mhm.
And it sucks because like you try to like explain and share something and then you're shut down.
Mhm.
Oh, you're just trying to label yourself and put yourself in a special little box.
Mhm.
And even like recently I posted about like, all the fear with like vaccinations because I just had a baby
Mhm.
and trying to figure out like, is it okay to vaccinate? Is there risks? What are the risks? And like I even got like a couple friends who were like, girl, just because someone's autistic doesn't mean it's like a death sentence. And I did not mean that like in any way, but I can already feel like how people sometimes, just because they're diagnosed with something, feel like they almost have to protect it because it's
Mhm.
just talked about so negatively
Mhm.
in the public.
Oh yeah. And people think that you're just using it as an excuse, you're just making it up, you're lazy, that it's not real. I mean, I was even surprised when I started making a lot of targeted content about ADHD or neurodivergence, how many hateful comments I received about it.
Mhm.
Either just people shaming me for having it or saying that it's not real, that I'm just making it up. There still is a huge misunderstanding about neurodivergence and ADHD and autism. And that's why I think we both are so passionate about this podcast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for me, yes, 100%. I think that there is not there's people are having more of an awareness for autism but they're not really even with all the awareness that's out there they don't really understand it completely.
Mhm.
They don't realize how wide that spectrum is,
Mhm.
how one little thing can actually make you like autistic, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you're just one way. Like it could be a lot of little things or it could be like just a one thing.
Mhm.
And like you said earlier, like everybody's experience is just personal to them.
Mhm.
Like, yes, my ADHD isn't always like yours, and yours isn't always like mine. And I think that if anything, this podcast hopefully brings like a lot of awareness about that in itself. And like, we want to erase the stigma, guys. Like, that is our
Yes.
focus, is we want to get the hate to just disappear. I mean, I know we can't, but if we can make it known what, what this is and what it feels like to have it. And like, we hear you, we see you. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's about that support. I think there's already so much internalized shame and guilt living with neurodivergence, and then being shamed for coming out and talking about it. It just adds to that, right? Like when you finally understand yourself and you're excited and you want to share it with the world, and then for people to just reinforce all that negativity of, oh, you don't have that, you're just lazy, you're just making excuses, or that's not real, or that's not valid. Like we're trying to break out of that.
Mhm.
And that feels really shitty when someone says that and you're trying to open up and be vulnerable about your lived experience, your diagnosis, your mental health. So we want to create a community where people can feel safe, seen, heard, understood,
Yeah.
and celebrate all of our own unique experiences and kind of come together. I have a lot of people that reach out to me and say, hey, like, I think I might be struggling with this, but I don't know where to start. Like, how do I meet with a therapist? How do I get diagnosed? How do I start medication? And so I think we need to be able to create kind of a resource guide or something for our listeners so they can have a place to go or start
Yes, we
based
are
on their
definitely doing
situation.
that.
Yeah,
That's a
because it's
great idea. Oh my
overwhelming.
God, yes. It is overwhelming. Like, you don't really know sometimes where to start. Okay, now I have a diagnosis. Now what? Like, for me to even get medication, it took like a couple, like my doctor and my therapist to be like, yeah, you need medication.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it's that obvious, like, can you imagine what, like, for me, like what I was going through, what people are going through when they don't get that support?
Yeah.
Um, and also just erasing all that stigma. I mean, even medication, people judge that. And so, if anything, I hope that we're able to guide people to the right resources and for the help that they really need.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the ADHD too, is kind of this paralysis or overwhelm to say, I think something's going on. I want to get help, but I don't know where to start. And then it feels too daunting and then giving up. And I think a lot of people maybe have some type of suspicion that this is happening, but they are too scared or too overwhelmed and seeking support. So we want this to be accessible for everyone. And if you don't have insurance or don't have a lot of money to pay out of pocket, to still at least have a place that you can go to get assessed and get some help. The other thing is everyone's treatment plan is different,
Mhm.
right? Like there are lots of different things that we can do to help, like pull that lever. Like medication can do wonders for a lot of people, but it doesn't work for everyone's brain, and
Yep,
that's
yep,
okay.
yep.
There's different medications or different types of therapy, coaching, lifestyle changes. So I think we'll talk a lot about those things here too. What we both do to manage our ADHD, but also understand that it's a very individualized process and kind of helping people lean into their own treatment plan or their own support.
Yeah, and also you have the group, right?
I have several different groups. So I have a Neurospicy Boss Club, which is like a support group for entrepreneurs that are
Yeah.
neurospicy. And I think often we kind of fall into that when we are neurodivergent because we like to be independent and autonomous. So we're very innovative and creative, but we need support with like the admin stuff, the boring stuff, the stuff that doesn't light up our brain. So I have a group for that. I have a group for moms that are
Mhm.
neurodivergent, the
Mhm.
Overstimulated Moms Club, and then also a self-love club for women that really want to lean into like self-love. So, I have coaching groups, I offer therapy, but there are lots of different resources out there. It's just having it all in one place where people can access it.
Well, this will be the place.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, this was so much fun. I'm
Yeah.
so excited for this. And yeah, I just cannot wait to hear about all the topics that we're going to bring to everybody. Um, any final thoughts?
Well, we're so stoked to share this message. We did so much brainstorming today of all the different topics and things that we want to cover. And as always, if you guys have anything that you want us to cover, any questions, any resources you need, send that our way. We definitely want this to be interactive and collaborative. So you guys are our community. Let us know what you need and what you're looking for, and we're here to deliver.
Yeah, we're looking forward to meeting some of you. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Woohoo!